Asking a girl out for the first time on Valentine's Day can sometimes be a gamble. Should I ask her to go out some time before Valentine's Day first? Is asking someone out for a first date on Valentine's Day too presumptuous? Should Valentine's Day be reserved for couples who have already reached a certain point in their relationship? And if V-Day is reserved for pre-existing relationships, would she reject my Valentine's Day invitation despite her willingness to say yes on any other day? Also, will that permanently seal me under the category of friend? I wrestled with this idea for 24 full hours before finally deciding to say, screw it. What have I got to lose other than my dignity? And so, with my newfound bravery, I decided to text her. Very brave of me, right? It went something like this. Me, what are you doing? She, nothing. She, you? Me, trying to make a decision. She, a decision about what? Me, where we should go this Friday. She, laughing face. Are you asking me out for Valentine's Day? Me, maybe. She, where would you take me? Me, it's a surprise. Are you saying yes? She, maybe, winky face. Little did she know, it wasn't just going to be a surprise for her. In reality, I had no idea where I was going to take her. But that little chocolate-covered light bought me a bit of time to find a place to go. I started Googling Valentine's Day events in town. I came up with the usual restaurants inviting couples for their special V-Day dinners, dance club parties, etc. Then I saw something that stuck out: an event for a Valentine's Day festival on a meetup group website. That's different, I thought. I've never heard of a festival for V-Day. It says they'll have food, drink, dancing, and entertainment of many types. I decided that this was the winner and signed us up with their RSVP form. That Friday came quickly. I picked her up around 7 and we drove out to the event, which was a bit outside of town. It was about a 45-minute drive past a lot of fields and barren areas. When we finally reached the destination on Google Maps, I saw a sign hung at the corner of a small turnoff that read Valentine's Festival with an arrow pointing down the dirt drive. We pulled in, and after a few seconds of nothing but trees and brush, we saw some other vehicles parked in an improvised parking lot fashion on the lawn. This brought a sigh of relief, as I really didn't want to look like a complete idiot in front of her on our first date, especially with it being Valentine's Day. We parked, got out. I took her arm in arm as we walked toward what looked like a large outdoor party going on with lots of lanterns and merry-sounding noise. This was definitely the place. I looked at her and noticed a smile. "This looks like fun," she said. I smiled when I saw that she was happy with my decision. We eventually came to a front gate where a woman, dressed in period clothing, asked to see our RSVPs. I showed her on my phone, and she checked off our names on a sheet. We continued inward. To put it lightly, this place was beautiful. There were colored lantern lights everywhere, soft white string lights defining sections and walkways, an incredible food spread, which was as of yet untouched, people dancing, singing, and even some old men dressed in religious wear who seemed to be just as into it as everyone else. Most of them were dressed in the same period clothing as the woman who checked our RSVPs at the gate. And it was all set up in a field with beautiful flowers and greenery all around us. It looked perfect. I was proud of myself for making this decision. She would definitely be impressed. A minute later, we were approached by an older woman who looked happy to see us. "Hello, you must be our guests," she said with a smile. "We are definitely 2 of them," I said. She laughed. Come with me, we'll get you all set up for the festival. It starts shortly. Okay, I said, looking at my date. We smiled at each other and started following the woman. She led us to an area with some small wooden booths. I wasn't sure if these were outhouses, phone booths, or what. She said, "You take the one on the left, she can take the one on the right. Inside, you will find clothing to change into." We have to change clothing? I asked. Yes, for the aesthetic of the festival. You're both going to look so cute. I looked at my date, gave her a half smirk with a shoulder shrug, and she did the same back. We entered our booths. I felt kind of silly wearing this costume clothing, but I was going to play along if everybody else was. I exited the booth. She was still in hers. A couple of minutes later, she opened the door and stepped out slowly, wearing a stunning dress of many colors. She looked like a princess. I think she could tell by my widened eyes that I liked it. "See something you like?" she asked. I chuckled. Absolutely. The woman looked at us both with a satisfied smile. "You both look splendid. We'll keep your clothing in bags for you. Come along." We followed her. She led us to an area with several tables of food and drink and told us to make ourselves at home. We grabbed some small plates of hors d'oeuvres along with some wine. We talked and ate. "How did you find this place?" she asked. "I found it online." "Do you like it?" "Of course I do. It's wonderful." After finishing our food, we refilled our wine and headed out toward an area where there were people laughing and dancing to music played by a small group of musicians with stringed instruments. I asked her to dance, and we danced and laughed and even kissed. A little while later, everybody started moving to another location, so we followed. We came to an area with a large platform like a stage, with 2 chairs in the middle. The stage was decorated with flowers of red, yellow, and orange. Shortly after, a few of those old men in religious garb walked up the steps on the side of the stage, bringing a couple of guests with them and directing them to sit in the chairs. I couldn't wait to see what they were about to do. After the guests in the chairs, a male and a female, were seated, the woman who had given us our festival clothing approached the stage, then turned to address the crowd. "As we are here to honor the great Romulus and Remus, creators of Rome, the festival has now begun." Everyone began cheering. "Who?" I whispered to my date. "Shh," she said. "Bring her in," said the woman. A large carriage was being pulled by several men toward the stage. When they got closer and people were out of the way, I noticed that there was some sort of animal inside. A very large animal. When the carriage reached the front of the stage, it became clear to me that this was some sort of wolf-like creature. I was getting pretty uneasy by this point. The woman turned toward the guests on stage. "For this part, you will be the goat," she said, pointing at the man. He laughed. She then turned to the female and said, "And you will be the dog." She looked confused and insulted by this statement. The male said, "What?" The woman assured him, "Don't worry, it's part of the celebration." And he seemed to calm down, but still looked annoyed. I looked at my date and whispered, "This is getting weird." She replied, "Yeah." Both guests were starting to look woozy, like they were about to pass out. The female guest's wine goblet fell to the floor with a loud clanking sound as she slumped over. The male looked over at her, frightened and angry. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed, then looking at his own wine goblet just before passing out. The old men in religious garb started strapping them both into their chairs. I shouted, "What the hell is going on here?" as my date grabbed my arm. The woman placed her hand on my arm, saying, "It's okay, it's okay. This is normal." I looked at her with confusion. The wolf-like creature in the carriage cage was getting upset by my outburst and was growling toward me. Back on the stage, the old men in religious garb started stripping their clothes off until they were completely naked. "Oh, what the hell is this?" I exclaimed. Two of the naked old men picked up large knives and walked in front of the couple in the chairs. Before I even knew what was happening, the old religious men thrust the knives into the couple's chests simultaneously, pulled them out, turned toward the crowd, and wiped the bloody blades across their foreheads. They then started laughing, and the crowd cheered. "Oh my God!" I exclaimed, grabbing my date's arm. "We have to get out of here." She looked at me in horror, with tears coming from her eyes. "Don't be frightened," said the woman. "This is all part of the celebration." The wolf creature was getting angrier and louder, still looking in my direction. I screamed, "Let's go," at my date. At this point, the woman shouted, "Let her out," as several men started opening the cage door of the carriage to let the wolf free. We ran, hand in hand, back in the direction that we came from. I plowed through people as we ran back toward the entrance gate. We got through the gate and I slammed it shut. We continued running toward the parking lot. The funny part is, when I looked back, nobody was chasing after us. It was like they didn't think there was anything wrong. When we got to the car, I first unlocked her door to make sure she was safe inside, then unlocked mine and I jumped in. And unlike every horror movie I've ever seen, the car started on the first try. We sped away, leaving a dirt cloud in our wake. After a couple of minutes, I finally glanced over and my date was looking tired. She was passing out. Oh no, I thought. We drank the wine. A few minutes later, I started feeling like I was about to pass out. Then I decided that we had a better chance of making it if I pulled over than if I passed out and crashed. So, I pulled over and called 911. At least, I think I did. I don't remember hanging up. I don't even remember talking to them. All I remember is being awoken by police busting out my window. EMS was on the scene and pulled us both out of the car, loading us into the back of an ambulance. That's the last thing I remember before the next day. When we woke in a hospital the next morning, I learned that our stomachs had been pumped as a preventative measure, as they didn't know what was in the wine that we drank. They had us on IVs all night to keep us hydrated. I told the police all about the festival, the murders, everything. I even gave them the address of the event that I punched into Google Maps the prior evening. Later that day, I received a call from them saying that they checked the address, but there was nothing there. I told them, I know it's in the middle of nowhere, but it was down a dirt side drive to the left, right by where Google said the address should be. You have to go through the drive and everything is back there in the field. The officer hesitated for a few seconds, then replied, "We did see the side drive, and we did go through it. There's nothing back there. No people, no lights, no stages, no garbage left behind, nothing. We spent over an hour looking. There's just nothing there." I then grabbed my phone to bring up the festival group on the meetup website. As you guessed it. Gone. My name's Adam, and like anyone else, I had my fair share of nerves about Valentine's Day. It's a day for making memories, and I wanted to make it unforgettable. I had been dating Emily for a couple of months, and I decided that this Valentine's Day would be special. The plan was simple: a quiet dinner, maybe a movie afterward, but I wanted to surprise her. I had read about a Valentine's Day festival in a local meetup group, and after reading about it, I thought it sounded different and exciting. The event promised food, music, and activities to celebrate the holiday. It seemed perfect for creating memories that we could look back on fondly. The day came, and I picked Emily up at 7 p.m. We had our little gifts for each other, and we set off for what I hoped would be the most perfect Valentine's Day ever. The drive was peaceful, the air crisp with the scent of winter, but as we drove further from the city, the road got quieter, less familiar. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, eyeing the darkening path ahead. "Yeah, it's going to be great. Just trust me," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We finally arrived at the destination, a dirt path leading into a field of trees. A simple wooden sign at the entrance read, "Valentine's Day Festival," with an arrow pointing down the path. I looked over at Emily, who was still a bit unsure but seemed willing to go along with it. We drove down the dirt path, passing an eerie stretch of trees before coming upon a large open area. There were cars parked in a disorganized fashion on the lawn, and a small crowd gathered near a gate, illuminated by lanterns. The atmosphere felt a little strange, but I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just the excitement of trying something new. At the gate, a woman in old-fashioned clothing greeted us. She checked our names from the RSVP list, and we entered, following her toward a beautiful open area with string lights hanging between the trees and tables piled high with delicious food. There was even a small band playing soft music in the background. It was picturesque in a way that reminded me of something from a storybook. "This is so beautiful," Emily said, her eyes bright with excitement. I was relieved to see her enjoying herself. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. We mingled for a while, chatting and sampling food. Then, the woman who had greeted us earlier approached again, smiling. "We're glad you could join us. Please, follow me. We have special attire for everyone to wear for the celebration." I looked at Emily, confused. "Special attire?" "Yes," the woman responded enthusiastically. "It's part of the festival's tradition. You'll see. Trust me, it'll make the experience even better." Reluctantly, we followed her to a row of small booths where we were each handed costumes, period clothing, colorful and dramatic. Emily raised an eyebrow but changed into it without hesitation. I felt ridiculous, but figured I could play along for the night. When Emily stepped out, she looked stunning. The dress she wore looked like it had come from another time, a beautiful mix of reds and golds. I was impressed. We continued into the main area, now both wearing our new costumes. The music had picked up, and people were dancing and laughing. It felt like a celebration from another era. I was happy Emily was having fun, even though something about the entire setup felt off. But I couldn't put my finger on why. As we walked further into the celebration, we found a large stage surrounded by flowers, with 2 chairs in the center. The old woman appeared again and, with a smile, motioned for us to sit down. "Is this part of the festival?" I asked, uneasy. "Don't worry. It's all part of the tradition," she said. "A small ritual to mark the beginning of the festivities." I glanced at Emily, who looked just as confused as I felt, but sat down with me. The crowd grew quiet as several older men in what seemed to be religious robes appeared, moving toward the stage. They were carrying large knives. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my composure, unsure if I was overreacting. The men started chanting, and soon the atmosphere became heavy, ominous. The strange woman on stage announced, "To honor the great Romulus and Remus, creators of Rome, we begin with a sacrifice." I froze. I turned to Emily. "Emily, we need to get out of here." But before we could move, the scene turned even darker. The two guests in the chairs were strapped down by the old men. I felt a chill run down my spine when I realized that the sacrifice was not some staged performance. I couldn't look away as the men shoved the large knives into the guests' chests, pulling them out and raising them toward the crowd. Blood splattered onto the stage as they laughed, wiping the bloody blades across their foreheads. My stomach turned. Emily gasped. "What is going on?" The woman smiled at us. "Don't be frightened. This is part of the tradition." "Tradition?" I snapped, my voice rising in fear. "This is insane." It was then that I noticed something even worse. There was a huge cage near the stage, and the creature inside was growling. It was massive, like a wolf, but the eyes were too human. Before I could even react, the cage door was thrown open. The wolf-like creature lunged toward the stage, its growl echoing through the crowd. Panic erupted. Emily grabbed my hand, and we bolted. We ran through the crowd, trying to escape, but it felt like we were running in circles. The people around us didn't even seem to notice what was happening. They cheered as if it were still just a part of the celebration. We finally reached the gate, and I slammed it shut behind us. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding in my chest. "Let's go!" I yelled, dragging Emily toward the car. I fumbled for the keys, and finally we were in the car, speeding away from that nightmare. As I drove, I noticed Emily's face pale, her eyes fluttering. She was slipping into unconsciousness. The next thing I knew, I was feeling dizzy too, my vision blurred. I pulled over, my hand shaking as I dialed 911. The last thing I remember was seeing the flashing lights of an ambulance and hearing the faint sound of sirens. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. The fore drip in my arm reminded me of the hellish night we'd just survived. The police told me that our stomachs had been pumped after we'd consumed tainted wine at the festival. They had found us just in time. I tried to tell them everything, the ritual, the creature, the murders, but they were skeptical. When they investigated the address I gave them, they found nothing. No festival. No people. Just empty land. And when I tried to look up the event again, it was gone. The entire website had vanished without a trace. It wasn't just a nightmare. It was real. And for a night that was supposed to be full of love and laughter, it turned into something neither of us would ever forget. That was the Valentine's Day when we learned that some memories aren't meant to be made. Asking someone out on Valentine's Day felt like signing up for humiliation. But after 24 hours of pacing, I texted her. Me, got plans Friday? Her, depends. You finally asking me out? Winking face. Me, maybe. If you're into surprises. Her, try me. My hands shook. Surprises. I googled frantically, landing on an obscure forum, Valentine's Masquerade, Eternal Love Ritual. RSVP only. The description whispered of a bond transcending death, hosted by the Order of Eros. Edgy enough to be memorable, I thought, filling the form. Friday arrived. I picked up Clara, her laughter easing my nerves. The GPS led us 45 minutes into the woods, the road narrowing to a dirt path. Trees clawed at the car, moonlight slicing through like a blade. Romantic, Clara joked, but her knuckles whitened on the door handle. A wrought iron gate loomed ahead, flanked by statues of lovers entwined, their stone faces twisted in agony. A hooded figure emerged, scanning our QR code. "Welcome," he rasped. "Wear these. The ritual demands anonymity." He handed us ivory masks, their edges thorned. The estate was a cathedral of decay. Chandeliers dripped wax like tears, tables groaned under roasted meats and blackened roses. Guests in moth-eaten silks waltzed to a discordant violin. "Creepy," Clara whispered, "but kinda cool." A server offered goblets of wine, syrupy and bitter. We clinked. "To not dine tonight," she grinned. The violins screeched. At midnight, doors slammed. A woman in a crimson had ascended a staircase. "Tonight, Eros claims his dues," she cried. "To forge an eternal bond, one must sever another." Murmurs swelled. A couple was dragged forward, masks torn off, revealing pallid faces. The man thrashed as a dagger was pressed into his hand. "Prove your love," the crowd chanted. Thunk. The blade sank into his partner's chest. Blood pooled, sizzling as it hit the floor. Clara screamed. Chaos erupted. Guests shed their skins, revealing hollow-eyed corpses. The woman pointed at us. "New vessels." We bolted. A hallway swallowed us, portraits leering, each frame a couple mid-scream. Clara's breath frayed. "They're hurting us." The wine clawed at my mind. Halls warped. We stumbled into a crypt, altar piled with hearts. "Join us," a corpse gurgled, lunging. I swung a candelabrum. It crumpled, bones clattering. "Here." Clara pried open a grate. We crawled through filth, rats nipping, until moonlight blinded us. The car was gone. "Run," I gasped. Twigs lashed our faces. Behind us, wails crescendoed, a tide of rot and lace. Clara stumbled. "Go," she begged. "Not without you." I hauled her up. A road. A truck's headlights seared the dark. We flagged it down, the driver's face slack with horror. "Get in." At the hospital, tubes snaked from our arms. "Poison," the doctor said. "Hallucinogens, maybe." Cops found no estate, just a charred foundation, a relic from an 1800s cult. "Mass hysteria," they shrugged. Clara quit answering calls. But last week, a package arrived, her mask, thorned and blood-crusted. A note, "Eternity awaits." Now I see them, shadows with her laugh, her scent. Tonight, my door creaks open. "Miss me?" she purrs, eyes black as the ritual's wine. "Valentine's Day?" I barricade indoors. But the masks whisper, closer each year. And deep down, I crave the blade's kiss, the vow we never finished. Eternity awaits.